Welcome back to another Tallapoosa Publishers Sports Podcast. I'm Henry Zimmer, Sports Editor with Tallapoosa County Schools.
I'm Dalton Middleton. I'm here with the Elmore County Schools.
And we're going to talk about some baseball and softball playoffs. Starting with baseball, both spring sports have wrapped up. We had a lot of postseason success. No state championships for anybody, but we had a lot of teams come really close. So I wanted Dalton to kind of talk about a bunch of his teams going deep in the playoffs. Dalton, you take it away. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, yeah, I'll just start off with general, I guess. We had probably the most successful baseball postseason since I've been here. And that's saying something since we didn't have a team make it to the state championship or win a state championship, but we had the last few years. We had 4 teams in Elmore County make it to at least the third round of the playoffs.
Right.
That's Holtville and Tallahassee each made it to the third round of the 5A playoffs. Wetumpka made it to the third round of the 6A playoffs for the first time in 32 years.
Impressive.
And then Edgewood technically made it to their third round, which was the state championship where they eventually fell.
Right.
But, we'll start off with, I guess, Holtville. The defending 5A state champs, they lost a lot of talent from last year. They really weren't expected to win it again this year, but they made a pretty good run. They took down Elmore County in the first round, which Elmore County was expected to be really good this year. And then they went on and they beat Headland for the fourth straight season in the postseason. Yep. They knocked off Headland, and then they went on the road and lost to Valley 2-0 and 1-0 in 2 really good games.
I actually covered those games for you.
You did. And 2 pitchers duels, and then Valley went on, I think, to lose in the South State. But a pretty good season for Holtville. Wrapped up, a great career for Dre Barrett, who ended up getting the Elmore County Player of the Year, and a couple of those other kids who had a good one. But really, one of the Tallahassee was really one of the most impressive teams. Tallahassee had a good season against all the teams in Elmore County. I think they beat Wetumpka twice. They beat Elmore County twice. They ended up making it to the third round and really knocked off one of the best teams in the state in the second round to do it. They beat Gulf Shores in the 3-game set, 2-1. The game 3, they won 6-4, and it was a fantastic game. They were down, I think it was 2-0, or maybe it was 3-0, and they ended up, Brew Milner ended up hitting 2 home runs. One was just an absolute bomb to give them the lead late in that game, and they ended up making it, and they went down to Mobile Christian, who ended up winning the state championship, and or maybe finished runner-up. I don't remember if they won.
They made it there at least.
They made it to the state championship, and they ended up getting swept down there at Mobile Christian. And then Wetumpka, makes it. I think they actually went to Mobile as well and got swept. They went down to Spanish Fort in the third round and got beat. But they had a heck of a series, probably the most exciting series of all of our teams in the postseason with their second-round matchup with Ben Russell, which you were actually at, Henry.
I did cover that series.
Maybe talk a little bit about how that series went, because I know there was one game there that looked like it should have been Ben Russell,
right,
but Wetumpka walked away with the win.
So actually, I'm going back to Tallahassee. I'm looking at their box score to give Tallahassee even more credit in that clincher against Gulf Shores. They were down 4-0 and ended up winning 6-4, rattling off 6 runs rather in the 4th and the 5th. So congrats to Tallahassee. I took some pictures at that game. Saw some real good baseball played, but if you want to talk about some up and down baseball for both teams, the Ben Russell-Wetumpka series was kind of a wacky one. Ben Russell lost the first game 7-1, came back that night and won 11-4. So 2 kind of lopsided scoring efforts, and then the final game fell Wetumpka's way 6-5. Ben Russell was down for most of the game, came back, put runners in scoring position, in the final inning, the final bottom of the 7th. Chance Lumpkin, senior, hit a double, I believe, scored a couple runs, and put himself in scoring position, but they just couldn't close the door. That was supposed to be kind of the Disney storybook ending for Ben Russell at their own spot in Alex City, but it just didn't fall their way against Wetumpka, and Wetumpka obviously advanced. There was some really good pitching in both those for both those teams from Wetumpka and Ben Russell. A lot of kids that are going to have successful careers, especially from the couple from Ben Russell that are going on to play in college. Does Wetumpka have any kids going to play? Do you know?
I know Jacob Smith's going to CAC.
Gotcha.
And then most of their team, they only had a few seniors that were going on to play. I think Caden Woolridge is, but he had a torn UCL this year, didn't pitch. Most of the team was younger, sophomores and juniors. What really interests me about that matchup, was the game 3 that Wetumpka ended up winning. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, Ben Russell out-hit him 13-2, I think, in the game, and Wetumpka still walked away with a win. A lot of walks, a lot of hit by pitches from the Ben Russell pitching staff, but that was one I remember. I talked to Wetumpka coach Michael Dismukes about, and he was just like, we looked up and we only had 2 hits, but all of a sudden we're up 6-3 at one point or something like that, and
it was 6-3.
Probably a game that Wetumpka not normally would win, but they pulled that one out, and they had a pretty good postseason run there.
So I'm looking back at it just to make sure my facts are all right. With 1 out, Chance Lumpkin steps up to the plate, going to play some college ball. Doubled down the right field line, put himself on second. Scored Gabe Benton and scored Jackson. They both 2 other kids going to play college ball. Caden Hyde then comes out to strike out swinging, 2 outs. The Lumpkin brother, Charlie Lumpkin, gets hit by a pitch. So the runners on first and second. And Carter Bullitt, a senior, comes up but couldn't get the job done at the plate. He strikes out, and Wetumpka moves on to win. It was set up for Ben Russell, but sometimes the chips just don't fall your way. Ben Russell still had a very successful season, and we'll see kind of where they all fall with the all-outlook team coming out potentially next week. Wetumpka's coach made Coach of the Year. I mean, Dalton, do you want to talk about that and kind of, again, that 32-year drought they broke?
Yeah, so Wetumpka, I gave it to Coach Michael Dismukes because of the success they had this year. They really, probably were not the best team in the area, but they had lost 9 straight, I think, at one point in the season. And then they kind of turned around in that mid-season game against Ben Russell that they played. And then it went in, and then also I think they won, I think it was 17 of their last 19 to end the regular season. They ended up going 24-16, I think is what they ended the season at, and making it to the third round. And just that postseason run, which they got a really good draw in the postseason, and that's no shot at Brookwood or Ben Russell because those are both talented teams, but it's not a Hewitt or a Hillcrest or a Saraland draw, and that was kind of the good one for Wetumpka, and they ended up making it. And then I think that's a pretty good season for Wetumpka, the best one they've had in 32 years, and I think you had another pretty good season over there in Reeltown that I think if you want to talk about them, I think they also made it to the third round.
Yes, the Reeltown baseball team led by Jamarcus Smith, who came on. I mean, the Reeltown fans will tell you that they knew Jamarcus was going to have a good season, but I mean, the season he had was probably well more than they thought he would. I'm just looking at his stats right now, 50 total innings pitched. He went 3-5 because he pitched, all the time for him, so that's going to lie a little bit, but 110 strikeouts, that's the number you want to look at, reaching middle 90s. I mean, that kid is a flamethrower, going to be taking over as the starting quarterback for Jake Hornsby on the football field when that time rolls around. But yeah, you got Reeltown, they drew another home series to start the playoffs as they did last year. So that's 2 for 2 home series under Coach Matt Johnson, who does a little bit of everything for the Reeltown Rebels. They absolutely just walked right through St. Luke's. That was a pretty easy series for them, 2-game sweep. They went out to Washington County, lost the first game 7-4, maybe a little hangover from the last week, thinking maybe, you might walk through a team, and then they walked right out of that one with a 10-5 win and a 5-3 win to move on to the third round, where they drew Ayrton, who is basically the romp of the roost, essentially, for baseball in 2A, which then obviously defeated Reeltown as they did the year prior. Again, no shame to Reeltown. They had a really successful season. Guys like Jake Hornsby are going on to play at LBW. They had a really a big group of talented seniors, but also when you get a guy like Jamarcus coming back, you've got a lot to look forward to. So good for Reeltown. They went further than a team in Tallapoosa County. Both Dadeville also made the playoffs. They have had kind of a transformative baseball season, and I think that's really important over there that Coach Jeff Harden is really kind of bringing baseball back to Dadeville, and that was kind of his big first goal as the new head coach coming from Reeltown to bring Dadeville kind of pride back to the baseball team. I think he definitely accomplished that, and also Horseshoe Bend making it to the playoffs as well. Speaking of Horseshoe Bend, we're going to transfer over to some softball. The Horseshoe Bend Generals were the only team from Tallapoosa County to make it to state with a 27-8-1 final record, led by Player of the Year Brindley Alford, a freshman pitcher who had over 250 strikeouts. You heard that right, 251 total strikeouts over the 250 mark, and 2 perfect games to her name. She pitched every single time, essentially, for Horseshoe Bend, taking over for last year's Player of the Year, actually, Madison Smith, who won it as an 8th grader. And Coach Hagen Witter, the coach for Horseshoe Bend, is now a 2-time defending Outlook Coach of the Year for leading her Horseshoe Bend Generals. They had an excellent year. That's been well documented. Dalton, you want to talk a little bit about your softball teams as well?
Yeah, so I had Wetumpka as the only team in Elmore County to make it to state, and the defending Class 6A champs, returned I think 6 starters out of their team last year. Everyone expected them to kind of win it again. They make it back on a spectacular finish in the regional tournament down there in Gulf Shores. They lose the second game to Baldwin County just like they did last year. Pitcher struck out I think 16 this year, struck out 17 Indians last year, and then kind of went on a tear day 2. They beat Ben Russell 13-3, then Pike Road 9-5, and then they played Saraland and beat them 7-6 on a Maya Holt walk-off 2-run bomb or 3-run bomb, whatever it was.
Shocking.
And, that was it was pretty crazy. It was they had a runner. It was a 2-run bomb because there was a first base was open, and instead of pitching around her with 2 outs, they decided to pitch to her, and she sent the
oh, that's what happens.
The second pitch of the at bat.
Right.
Don't pitch to the Gatorade Player of the Year on the game. But then they make it to state, and I think everyone expected Wetumpka to try to at least make another run at it, and they got there, and I think it was pretty quickly shown that they were not this was not going to be the same run as last year. They played Hartzell in the first round of the state tournament, and Hartzell had 2 sisters. One was a pitcher, one was a catcher. They're both committed to Auburn.
That's big time right there.
Wetumpka actually went up 1-0, and then all of a sudden she just started throwing the ball, just straight fastballs past Wetumpka players, and it was like, okay, this game's going to be a little different.
Yep.
They came out and scored 4 runs in the first, took a 4-1 lead on Wetumpka, and then just never looked back. And then Wetumpka tried to make something of it in the losers bracket. They ended up beating number 1 ranked Helena. That was actually the number 1 versus number 2 team in the state. They ended up beating Helena 6-3. And then they were about to play Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, and in the very top of the first inning, Maya Holt got hurt on her. She grounded out to second base. Everyone thought was a broken hand. I think it ended just being a jammed hand.
Oh, good. I thought it was a broken hand, actually.
She couldn't finish the game. Ella Watson came in, held Hillcrest scoreless for 4 or 5 innings. They finally broke through, and Wetumpka couldn't get enough to make up for it. Ends their season in the top 5, in 6A, which is not where they wanted to finish, but it was a great season nonetheless.
Right.
I think they ended the year 48-7. They got 5 seniors that are going to play college ball, so that was a heck of a run for the senior class. They're the winningest class in Wetumpka softball history. 4 area championships. They've been to regionals 3 times. They've been all 4 times. They've gone to state twice. They've won state once. So it was a pretty good run for them. And no one else in Elmore County made the state, but we had a couple close with Holtville and Tallahassee both. Falling 1 game short in the regional tournament, making it to that regional final, and then losing. But it's a pretty good season all around.
And on the Tallapoosa County side, not to be remiss, but Benjamin Russell went down to Gulf Shores and played a little bit in the regional tournament again after coming runner-up in the Wetumpka region. Those regions will now be separated, so maybe a potentially easier draw for Ben Russell moving forward. And also Reeltown went 1 for 2 in regionals, ultimately falling to Horseshoe Bend as Horseshoe Bend made its way to clinching their state title berth. And if you haven't seen it, check out me and Dalton on the YouTube channel playing a little softball against Ella Watson and Maya Holt from Wetumpka. We struggle a good bit. We do not do as well as I think maybe I thought I would. Dalton didn't think he'd do too well, and we definitely didn't do well at all. So thank you to those girls for letting us do that. And thank you also to Malcolm Simmons for letting me race him in track recently. That video is coming soon, so stay on the lookout for that. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
This has been the sports edition of TPI the Podcast, a production of TPI Media. Community journalism is vital to America. If you value trustworthy reporting, please consider supporting us by clicking the link in the show notes.